final deal is also dominating UK politics today with the Liberal Democrat Manifesto. Now, Tim Farron hasn't yet launched the manifesto. He will do so within minutes, but we do know very large chunks of it. And absolutely, the central point is he wants a second EU referendum on the final Brexit deal. There's much else there as well. There's an extra penny on the pound to fund money for the NHS and social care services. There is the decriminalisation and sale of cannabis, which they say will raise an extra £1 billion a year. There's a big pitch to young voters. They're saying that under 21s would get much cheaper bus passes, and they would also, under the age of 21, still qualify for housing benefit. But be in no mistake, the absolute centrepiece of this whole campaign, led by Tim Farron, is about Brexit. And I quote, "Imagine a brighter future. You don't have to accept Theresa May and Nigel Farage's extreme version of Brexit that will wreck the future for you, your family, your schools and hospitals in the biggest fight for the future of our country in a generation." So that is what Tim Farron is about to say. And I'm asking you, will their manifesto clinch your vote in this general election? So if you think, thank you, Mr. Farron, I'd love another EU referendum, then call me on 0345 60 60 973. If you think, oh no, not another referendum, then please text 84850. Or if you want to comment on any other aspect of the Lib Dem manifesto, and indeed how you think they're doing in this campaign, then using the hashtag Farage and LBC, tweet at LBC. Please get involved, let me know what you think, and as ever, you can watch the show live. Just go to LBC's Facebook page. Now, last night we allowed you to have your say on the Labour manifesto. Tomorrow it'll be the turn of the Conservatives. But tonight, can we please, if we can, focus on the Liberal Democrats? And I'm going to ask Tony in Heathrow what he, albeit he hasn't delivered it yet, but what he makes of what we believe Tim Farron's about to say.
Well, it's lovely to speak to you, Nigel.
Good evening.
I've voted since I was 18, and I'm now 69. But can the Liberal Democrats be taken to court for Trade Description Act, as I believe they are not Democrats? The vote was for Brexit, end of story.
So you're saying that the vote... Well, OK, let me try and play devil's advocate, if I can. I have to confess on this subject, tough for me. But what Farron has been arguing now for the best part of a year is that we didn't vote to leave the single market. That is the argument that Farron is putting.
Sorry.
Why do you think we did?
Because everybody, the politicians and yourself, who I listen to all the time, and I've voted for you the last few years, said this. We would leave. Well,
Tony, I have to say that I agree with you. And I'm going to put it out there to any Lib Dem supporter or MP or anybody, because actually, Tony in Heathrow, and I thank you for your call, Tony is right in this sense that every single major player on both the Remain and the Leave side said that if we vote for Brexit, we'll be leaving the single market. And those of us on the Brexit side thought it was a good thing, and those on the Remain side thought it would be a disaster. And in fact, Tim Farron thinks it's such a disaster, and I'm going to quote this again. He says that Brexit and leaving the single market will wreck the future for you, your family, your schools and hospitals. So I have to say, I might not agree with Tim Farron, but it's strong language, there's a lot of passion, and without doubt, Tim Farron does try hard, very hard. Some would say too hard, but he's been going all around the country on that coach, and to be fair to him, he actually goes and meets voters, and I rather like that. We're staying in Heathrow, but we're going to Matthew now. Matthew, good evening. Does this Lib Dem manifesto help their campaign?
Well, basically, Nigel, evening. I'm Remain accepted. We've got to get on and get a better deal with Europe. But basically, Theresa May said, this election is about Brexit. So this is the second referendum we're having. Basically, I'm going to be voting for the Liberal Democrats because I want her to have a coalition government. so we could get more people involved in the negotiations. And because the most important thing is we've got to get that free trade deal with Europe, because we're not going to get any free trade deals with the rest of the world and just turn our backs to the whole of Europe. We've got to have more parties involved.
Well, as far as the rest of the world's concerned, Matthew, you know, there are countries queuing up saying they want a free trade deal with us. African countries, the American administration, etc. As far as the EU's concerned, well, I'll talk about that after the 7:30 news, because that was really the centrepiece of what we were discussing in this Parliament today. And you're quite right. I mean, the ideal position would be that we would have a tariff-free deal with the European Union, such as the one they've just negotiated with Canada. Whether that's possible or not, we'll discuss a bit later. But can I ask you, Matthew, did you think the coalition from 2010 to 15 was a success?
Well, I mean, I think the Brexit issue wasn't on the table then, and I mean that we've got to get that right. And I mean, I think, you know, really all the UKIP supporters should try to vote for UKIP. I mean, I want more people involved, more MPs, and really everyone. It should be a cross-party affair. The Brexit negotiations. The first referendum was cross-party, and you know, Theresa May is just trying to sort of make political gain, and you know, that's why she's not going to be getting my vote this time. And I'm hoping, you know, everyone will vote for, you know, whatever MPs in their area what's got a better chance against Conservatives.
So
I want to reverse the decision. I mean, we're going to leave, but we've got to do that deal. You know, we can't walk away with no deal. I mean, that's the disaster. No one from the rest of the world we're not going to get a free trade deal with the rest of the world and just turn our backs with all the work. Because if we get a free trade deal with Europe, then basically, if we do another free trade deal with another country, they've got to also at the same time do it with Europe. Otherwise, it's not going to work. We're not going to be able to deal with America.
Matthew, Switzerland have got more free trade deals around the world than they've negotiated in their own right as a relatively small, though prosperous country, than we've got as members of the European Union. So I wouldn't be negative at all about our ability to do deals with the rest of the world. But you are a switcher, aren't you? You're switching from Tory to the Lib Dems in this election.
Coalition there, and you know, I really want you to be on the negotiation table as well. That's what, you know, hopefully UKIP will then get you more involved if they get more MPs, and you know, if there is a coalition, then hopefully, who knows, it might be a coalition with Conservative and UKIP if enough people vote for UKIP and the Conservatives don't get a majority. So I mean, I'm not trying to reverse the decision.
No. Okay, fine, I get it. One final question for you, Matthew. Would you like us to have a referendum on whatever the shape of the deal is in 2 to 3 years' time?
Well, no. I mean, I think if it's a cross-party, we got all the main parties at the table, and we get the best deal we can, as long as we do get this free trade deal with Europe, and then we can build on that with free trade deals to the rest of the world. But
okay,
really,
well,
as long as we're not paying, if we're paying, you know, we're going to have to pay to get this free trade deal. If it's less than we're paying now, it's a good deal. I mean, obviously, we want to pay less as possible. We're already out of the Euro, Schengen, so, you know, we've got to work together, everyone, to get this free trade deal with Europe.
Matthew, I like your collegiate approach to politics in the middle of a tribal election campaign. You've risen above much of the argument out there, and I thank you. Trevor, in Wembley, does the Lib Dem manifesto impress you?
No, it doesn't, especially this idea of decriminalising cannabis. I mean, what irresponsible thing to even suggest. I mean, you know, we don't want, I mean, you know, we got enough problems in this country with people drink driving and so on, you know, and taking other drugs. But the idea of, you know, allowing people to basically just get stoned whenever they want. You know, I expect so much more from a political party, you know.
Okay,
and plus they're just doing this just because they want. It's a clever way to get more, you know, tax revenue, you know.
Well, it would get some tax revenue. I think, Trevor, it would also be seen as a pitch to the young, as indeed are cheap bus passes for the young and housing maintenance for under 21s. But I mean, several states in America have now decriminalised cannabis. You can buy it in Portugal freely, you can buy it in Switzerland freely, but what you're really saying is you don't think that's right for our country.
Yeah, it's not right, because what we should be aiming towards is to a drug-free, to try and, help people to stop using drugs. Look at the amount of people that have died from smoking tobacco. I mean, and then the strain that it puts on the NHS. They spend billions treating people with smoking-related diseases, and here you got a party suggesting that smoking cannabis should be decriminalised. It's ridiculous. It's irresponsible.
But you would at least, Trevor, you would at least, because, people can buy cannabis now very easily, very freely, not just in the centre of London, in a small village in North Cornwall. If you want to buy this stuff, you can, but you're buying it from people who are criminal. And there is an argument, Trevor, that if you sell it in the local pharmacy or a registered shop, that actually you control the quality and you take the criminals out of it. That is the argument, Trevor, for decriminalising.
Yeah, but you got to think about young children as well, Nigel. What sort of country do you want them to grow up in? A country where everything is just, all the things that were bad for a long time are suddenly becoming acceptable.
Okay. No, Trevor, I get your passion in this. Can I just ask you something? If the Liberal Democrats had not put this in their manifesto, would you have been tempted to vote for them?
Only if they say things that convince me that they take governing a country seriously. I can't take a party seriously if they're going to come up with an idea of legalizing cannabis.
And one last quick question, Trevor. Do you want to see a second referendum on our membership of the European Union when the negotiations have concluded?
Well, yes, because a lot of people want to stay in the EU, yeah. So I do, yes. Okay.
No, Trevor, thank you. So, Trevor, very much a caller there who is attracted by the Lib Dems' main policy, but somewhat put off by the pledge on cannabis. Last night, we allowed you to have your say on the Labour manifesto. Tomorrow, you can say what you want to say on the Conservative manifesto. Tonight, we're focusing on the Lib Dem manifesto. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive from Tim Farron. What can I say? Well, have to be honest, he got the audience laughing. There was a bit of humour, there was a bit of self-deprecation, and that's good. And there's certainly passion. But actually, what he was saying was that it wasn't just leaving the single market that worried him. Actually, leaving the EU worries him, full stop. He wants us to have a second chance to perhaps reverse what we decided to do last year. The one very condescending bit was that not all of us that voted for Brexit are bad people. Well, thank you very much indeed for that, Tim. But so you can see that the Lib Dem pitch, and yes, there are lots of other things in the manifesto. I talked about some of them. There are others. They want to end the 1% public sector pay cap. They want an extra $7 billion put into education. They want a ban on the sale of diesel cars and vans in the UK by 2025. So there are lots of other policies here. But Brexit is at the centre of it, fighting to keep Britain in the single market and to have that second referendum and to avoid Theresa May and Nigel Farage's extreme version of Brexit. And I wonder whether Cameron in Pimlico is influenced by that. Good evening.
Hi, Nigel.
Hi.
I'd like to kind of try and play devil's advocate without, whilst attempting to not reveal my party's preference.
Okay.
Surely a second vote only provides clarity on the decision and confidence on the decision, whether you're for or against. I know plenty of people on both sides of the discussion, plenty of people who, knowing now how Europe has reacted to our first referendum and knowing how it's being handled, would rather leave because they've had an entire year of information. So whether you're for or against the referendum, a second referendum is surely the most democratic act that we can do to finalise and firm up the decision. If the second referendum votes to leave, that just puts confidence in every single person who took part in that campaign, because they know that it wasn't just a one-time fluke, it was a decision the entire country made to leave. And if it's for or against, those people who voted to leave now have a chance to make their argument. It's an entire year's worth of
Cameron.
discussion.
Cameron, there is a long tradition of this, because the Danes voted against the Maastricht Treaty back in the early 1990s and were forced to vote again. Twice the Irish have rejected European treaties and been forced to vote again, and that's what I see certain pro-EU political voices trying to do with us. Let me tell you, Cameron, what I think the problem is. Let's say that the Lib Dems didn't win the election, because that's not going to happen, but let's say that we're back to 2010. Let's say the Lib Dems can go into a coalition government. Their price of going into that coalition would be a promise of a second referendum. As soon as a British government puts that on the table, there is then no incentive for anybody in the European Union to give us any deal of any kind whatsoever, because they'll think that if we get an absolutely zero deal, that we'll reverse our decision in 2 years' time. And that's what I think, and I challenge you, Cameron, or anybody to tell me I'm wrong on that.
No, I would completely agree that the timing of this is not positive in any aspect. If we were to even hint towards early polls suggesting that we were going to change our minds and actually stay, that would force the EU's hand to firm up their negotiators to force that hand.
Yeah, I mean that's right.
When previous callers state that someone's not democratic because they're calling for another vote, surely that is the democrat. It might not be the most correct decision. It might not be the best timing, but it is something that would reaffirm so many people who are going to this with doubt, whether they're voting on the left or the right or however it might be.
I think a critic of the Liberal Democrats would say that they failed to accept the referendum result last year, and say they're asking for a rematch. As far as I was aware, last year wasn't the best out of three.
Yeah, and I can't say what's right or wrong. I can't say who is correct in their decision. What I can say is that in 10 years' time, whatever the decision was, if we got it wrong in any aspect, leaving or staying, someone may have said, well, that second referendum, that might look good because we might have changed our mind. I'm not saying it's correct. I'm just saying that it's the democratic way forward. And in order to affirm the decision and create confidence with the voters and the parties alike, a second referendum would be the easiest way to set people's minds at ease.
All I would say is that for those of us that wanted a chance to vote to leave, we had to wait 40 years, and now it's the other way round. They want a rematch within the space of 3 years. Cameron, I thank you for giving your very objective point of view. Charlotte, in the Forest of Dean. Charlotte, are you a Lib Dem supporter?
No.
Right, okay.
Definitely not.
Okay.
I'm a Brexiter. I'm a very enthusiastic Brexiter, and having looked, well, the Lib Dem had with their manifesto out today. To be honest with you, I can't see how they are going to endear themselves to people who aren't already committed to the Lib Dem cause, because there are policies there that aren't going to attract, or in fact, they're going to repel any sensible voters, because there is nothing there for them to actually get any positive out on, because they want to they want to have a second referendum on Brexit. They still want to have immigration into this country, especially with the man children, as I call them, from Syria. The 13-year-olds who are 40. I mean that's basically what
You're so cynical. You're so cynical. Some of them were only 35, Charlotte.
Oh, well, mere striplings then, aren't they, Nigel?
Quite right.
But I can't see how that's going to go, because the thing is that him and Clegg have been some kind of tag team. I mean, if you look all over the media, especially on the politics shows, they've been rolled about by all the media organisations saying, we respect the decision, but, we have to have a second referendum, or we have to, we understand, but actually we really want to remain because all these terrible things are going to happen if we don't. And I think people are getting tired of it, Nigel. I'm sick to death of it, to be quite honest with you. Because it's like Chinese water torture. It's drip, 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 and people are just going to turn off. People are just going to shut off.
So do you think, Charlotte, I mean, the Liberal Democrats were hoping for, expecting, and one or two early opinion polls showed they might be having quite a big bounce in the opinion polls. Right at the minute, if we believe the polls, that doesn't appear to be happening. So you're basically saying that you think this manifesto will put off as many as it will attract.
It's not going to attract people like myself.
Okay.
Who want completely out, because it didn't say on the form, leave, but we're going to remain in a single market. It was either leave or remain, and as far as I'm concerned, leave means leave. Get out. We wanted to leave.
Charlotte, I can't really argue with that, can I? Coming from where I'm coming from, I think it was fairly clear as well. Charlotte, thank you very much for your call. Jeremy on Facebook disagrees with Charlotte. Jeremy says, excellent, well thought out plans, well done the Lib Dems. Paul says, liberal non-democrats are playing the long game. Decriminalise cannabis, second EU referendum, etc., catching the young voters. They're the up-and-coming voters. Well, they also, of course, I think would reduce the voting age to 16. So, Paul, you're right. This manifesto is a big pitch to youth, and I can see that very, very clearly. Janice says we cannot have a referendum on everything that's put on the table. Well, some people think we can. I'm going to go very quickly to Ron in Bethnal Green. Ron, have they advanced their cause, the Lib Dems, with this manifesto today?
I think so, Nigel. Firstly, I want to say I'm not a man who's right into his politics. I'm just a normal working man who gets involved when I can. And now, to be honest, I'm getting a bit fatigued with it all anyway, voting every other month. But,
yeah, a lot of people are, Ron.
Yeah, well, the one thing that Lib Dems, I must admit, your caller earlier is objective against the cannabis legalisation. I'm all for that, but I know you like focusing on Brexit and stuff like that. But with regards to Brexit, Cameron gave us a referendum and then ducked out of when it didn't go his way, and also you stepped down as soon as I like you, to be honest with you. I think you speak sense and you speak to people like me. But you took us to the edge and then stepped down. And now I feel that Theresa May, who stepped in as a Remainer, is just going to do whatever she pleases, because she is a Remainer deep down, you know what I mean?
Well, you may be right. She doesn't sound like a Remainer, and we'll examine that, Ron, tomorrow night. We are clear where Tim Farron stands on all of this, and he wants a second referendum, and you do as well, and I completely understand that. Just a quick defence of myself, Ron. I haven't stepped down. I haven't gone away. I've been doing Brexit battle in the European Parliament today, and you'll hear more of it in a couple of minutes. Ron, I thank you for your call. You're listening to Manifesto. Well, it's not just Tim Farron that is talking today about Brexit with passion, because the European Parliament met today to discuss Brexit. And they were all here, all the bigwigs, Monsieur Barnier, Verhofstadt, the negotiators, Mr. Tusk from the European Council, and, of course, the big cheese himself, Mr. Juncker from the European Commission. And this, of course, follows the Downing Street dinner. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Juncker came to Downing Street, and within hours of the dinner finishing, he'd said all sorts of things about his host, the food, etc. This is what I had to say this morning.
Imagine you invited a very important guest round for dinner, and you made all the preparations, and there were some very important confidential conversations that needed to be had, and you thought everything had gone well, and yet within hours your guest had told the outside world that you, the host, were deluded. And then all the contents of the conversation were blabbed to an opposition newspaper, and to add insult to injury, you say the food wasn't actually very good either. I don't know, Mr. Juncker, whether this is how you carry on in Luxembourg. I doubt it, because in any other part of the civilised world, frankly, that behaviour would be considered to be bloody rude. Your attempt to bully the Brits through this negotiation is not working.
Well, I have to say that it's very difficult here because basically they're in denial. Even though we voted to leave, even though we've triggered Article 50, they think that if they play hardball with us, if they make a series of totally impossible demands, that actually Brexit won't happen and the voice of Tony Blair and Tim Farron will come through. And I do stand by what I said. I think what he did to Theresa May was a terrible, horrible, damning insult. But please, any listeners that think I'm wrong and think that what Mr. Juncker did post that dinner was right, do let me know. And this is really, in a sense, what I'm saying about Tim Farron, that if we had a government or a coalition government that was promising a second referendum, we would play even more into that agenda of don't give the Brits a deal, because then they'll have a second referendum and they'll reverse the first one. I feel very strongly that that's where we are. I wonder what Aaron in Sevenoaks makes of all that.
Yeah, good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
Tim Farron, good evening to you. Tim Farron has said that he didn't vote to come out of the single market. Now, well, okay, that's all. Well, let's give him this one. The secretaries, under the Referendum Act, the Secretary of State was obliged to put a document before Parliament, publish a document and put it before Parliament, which outlines the information about membership of the EU. Now, he did that in April of 2016. Now, that document having gone before Parliament, Tim Farron must have known about that document because it's a legal requirement. So in that document, it outlines all the membership, the criteria, the full membership of the benefits. It talks about the 4 pillars, the freedom of movement, the single market, all that kind of thing. Now, if we vote to come out of that, it talks about full membership. It doesn't talk about qualified membership or part membership. If we vote to come out, he must know that that document no longer applies. In other words, we no longer accept the terms of that document. So therefore, what he is saying is, I didn't vote to come out, but he must have known the criteria. If he hasn't read that document, the question I would put to him is, why not?
Well, on his never-ending coach tour of the country, which I compliment him for, I hope he comes to Sevenoaks, and I hope you get the chance to ask him that. Look, I think he's in denial as well, isn't he? I mean, he makes his points about the single market, but he said in that speech, and we heard the clips of it earlier on the show, he regrets the decision. He's not accepting of a democratic vote. He regrets it, and he actually wants to reverse it.
Well, he does, but it's in black and white. I mean, it's in the act. The Secretary of State, fully complied with what he had to do. He put the document before Parliament on, I think it went in April of 2016. Now, if you read that document, it is information about the membership, which includes all the 4 pillars and all the other ancillaries that go with it. Now, he must know that document is in existence. He must have read it, and he must know that full membership means full acceptance of the terms of that document. If we have no longer full membership, it's a redundant document, and we start again, which is exactly what the Prime Minister is doing.
Which is exactly what the renegotiation is all about. Aaron, I thank you. Factual, and I believe absolutely correct. By text I get, why doesn't Tim Farron accept the Brexit vote? God knows the PM outlined what was at stake before the vote. The people can't keep voting because he doesn't like the result. And that's what Joyce from London says. And on Twitter I get, we voted. That is a decision. If we're forced to vote again, then surely a vote doesn't count. Frank says on Facebook, Tim Farron is an opportunist who has little faith in his own policies. Liberals are no Democrats, nor liberal, as they continue to want to ban things, including free speech. Well, actually, Frank, is he really an opportunist? I mean, you could argue that in this election he's going for the chunk of the electorate that don't like the Brexit result. But I think, to be honest, he's always believed this. When I've met Tim Farron over the years, he, Clegg, and the others in the Lib Dems, I mean, they are fanatical believers in the European project. They were fanatical believers in Britain joining the euro. I remember debating with them, nearly 20 years ago, and we were told if we didn't join the euro, we'd be left behind. So I think actually, with this Liberal Democrat Party, since the early 1990s, whether it's Paddy Ashdown, whether it was the late Charlie Kennedy, I think they've all been very consistent that they believe in the European project. And on that, I don't think it's fair to call him opportunist. We're going to go to Simon in Bermondsey. Now, there is a well-known Simon from the Liberal Democrats in Bermondsey who was an MP. It's not you, is it?
It's not me, although he does feel quite close to me.
OK. Sorry for teasing. Good evening. So, does this manifesto, is this going to lead to the big Lib Dem bounce?
I don't think it will, no. I think people can see straight through what he's trying to do. He says we voted for a departure and not a destination, but we can all see he's trying to reverse that decision to leave totally. And I think that it's fundamentally immoral, really, because if you consider how divided the country was a year ago, I mean, people fell out as friends, families were arguing, couples broke up. and he wants to sort of reopen all those wounds, which haven't healed yet. I mean, we still haven't left. People are still very much divided on this, and he wants to go back to that point where...
Do you feel, Simon, that a year on, and yeah, you're right. I mean, look, I was in the middle of it all. You know, I know how strong passions were on both sides of it. Do you think a year on that actually those divisions are healing?
A little bit. But, you know, I still sense quite a lot of bigotry out there, especially from, I mean, it was really at a height after the vote where people were calling us, you know, racist, and, you know, people were suggesting that the old people's vote shouldn't count as much because they're going to die sooner and stuff like that. It was disgusting things were coming out.
Yeah.
And
poor people.
Yeah.
I mean, why on earth are the working classes? Why have these poor people who don't wash very often got the vote? That was the kind of thing that we were subjected to.
And I'd be interested to talk to you, Nigel, as well, because I think it's quite a strength of Theresa May that she was for Remain, and she's sort of seen that for the stability of the country, she should back the majority, even though she believes that in Remain deep down. And I don't know whether I know you're quite sceptical about her sort of conversion, but perhaps it's a good thing for a Remainer that's showing the country, look, I was for Remain, but now I'm for the stability of the country, to heal the country and make sure that we don't have, you know, riots on the street, but we're going to go with the majority.
Well, Simon, I've said twice on this show that we're not discussing the Conservatives tonight, but you put so much bait down that I can't resist it. Look, if she is a genuine convert to Brexit for reasons of democracy, stability, respecting people's views, and she can now see the advantages, then that is tremendous. If, however, she is deep down a Remainer, and one previous caller tonight suggested that too, and she's doing this to win votes in an election and doesn't deliver the kind of Brexit people thought they were voting for, then wow, politics could be very interesting in a couple of, in sort of 2 or 3 years' time. So, Simon, you're unconvinced by this Lib Dem manifesto, and you kind of think they're not going to go far in this election, yeah?
That's right, yeah, and I think that, Jeremy Corbyn has basically said that he's going to leave. I mean, he hasn't come out and said he's going to leave, but his policies about nationalisation can only be done if you leave anyway.
Of course, yes. Yeah. So you think, well, the one thing I suppose we can say, Simon, about Tim Farron's manifesto is that it is utterly distinct and clear. There is no confusion on the biggest issue of this election, where the Democrats stand. And I thank you very much indeed for your call. Right now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive on my show. I've been listening to what you've got to say about the big issues. Well, next week, I'm going to come out and try and meet some of you face to face. We're going to be doing a road show up and down the country, and I'm going to be in Manchester on Monday, Birmingham on Tuesday, Newcastle on Wednesday, and Glasgow on Thursday. I want to hear from you, and if you've got a big burning issue you want to share with the nation, then try and get yourself involved with our studio audience. To book tickets, go to lbc.co.uk and be part of the conversation. That's the Nigel Farage Roadshow, all next week, only on LBC. Back to our main theme of today, which is the European Union, and it's Tim Farron's very passionate belief that leaving the EU, and particularly leaving the single market, would be an absolute disaster that will wreck the future for you, your family, your schools, and your hospitals. And he's saying, vote for me, vote Lib Dem, and we will give you a second referendum at the end of the Brexit talks. And that is his big pitch. There are many other policies too, but that's his big pitch to the British people. I'm going to ask Victor in Dorking whether he's convinced by that and whether he's going to vote for it.
I certainly am not, Nigel.
Right.
Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately for poor dear old little Timmy, Mrs. Gina Miller has shot his fox.
Right.
Because Lord Panic, when arguing his case in the Supreme Court, insisted that the reason an Act of Parliament was needed to trigger Article 50, and therefore us leaving the European Union, was the decision was irrevocable. And the Lord Neuberger and the majority decision accepted that. They said that once we triggered Article 50, we would be leaving the European Union, and that is why we need an Act of Parliament to trigger it.
They did say that. You're absolutely right. Yes, you're absolutely right. So is Tim...
Timmy can shout and scream as much as he wants. There's nothing he can do about it.
Yeah.
So, even if we had another referendum, we'd still have to leave the European Union because the triggering of Article 50 and leaving the European Union are both irrevocable. And in fact, the Attorney General actually agreed with that as well.
I mean, Victor, nothing is irrevocable, forever, obviously. But yeah, for this realistic period of the next couple of years, we have triggered it. I agree with you. It's part of our treaty deal with the European Union. It's pretty difficult to see that being changed. Although I would say to you, Victor, that there are people here in this organisation who would be very happy to see a referendum, very happy to see the UK reverse its decision. And here's one of the reasons why, Victor. The UK economy is bigger than the 20 smallest economies in the European Union. So the impact on the size of a single market isn't like one country leaving. It's in some ways like the 20 smallest countries leaving. So I do think, Victor, they could change their minds over here too. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, but they call us Treasure Island anyway, don't they?
They do.
Yeah. So I think all this nonsense and fear-mongering that's still going on by the what I call the extreme Remoaners, it's basically sour grapes.
But Victor, what's wrong with you? Tim Farron is saying it will wreck the future for you, your family, your schools, your hospitals. I mean, where's your heart, man?
Oh yeah, I'm a retard, aren't I? I'm a uneducated retard. Yeah.
Victor, I'm afraid I really do think you are, but I thank you for your call. James in Clapham. James, good evening. Does the Liberal Democrat Manifesto make you feel more inclined to vote for them?
Good evening, Nigel. No, Nigel, they remind me of basically the Japanese soldiers that were fighting in the Asian jungle 30 years after the war had finished and nobody told them what had happened. They'd lost.
Now, that is hilarious, James, that you've said that, and let me tell you why.
That was somebody said to you at the Oxford debate with Mr. Clegg.
That's right. I did an Oxford Union debate, and it would have been February 2016. And on the other side, Mr. Barroso, the former European, so Juncker's predecessor from the European Commission, and Nick Clegg. And the mood in the room was overwhelmingly Remain. And all the predictions in the press, the pollsters, the bookmakers, was that Remain would win and win comfortably. And Clegg said to me, he said, Nigel will become like, when he loses this referendum, a Japanese soldier stuck on a Pacific island, not recognising that the war is over, whilst the rest of us get on with our lives. So it is, you think, James, now the boot's on the other foot, do you?
I do indeed. And to be honest with you, Nigel, the manifesto is a joke because they're not going to win. They're not going to go into coalition. What is the point of drafting that book of fiction?
Well, hang on. They did go into coalition, didn't they, in 2010? Well, they did in 2010, so we can't write it off as a joke. I mean, I know the opinion polls have changed, but they were, up until 2 years ago, in coalition government, and there was a Liberal Democrat deputy prime minister. So we can't write them off completely, can we?
We can, because basically when they were on Daily Politics this morning, he asked him to cost it. He said, "I can't cost it over a parliament. This is what we want to show the British people where we are going in the next 5 years." What a joke,
James. The Liberal Democrats are not alone in struggling with their costings in this general election. But no, your view is clear. I thank you for your call. Robert in Newton Abbot, the West Country, which the Liberal Democrats are talking about as a big potential target for them. Do you think this manifesto will make people in Devon and Cornwall more likely to vote Lib Dem?
Good evening, Nigel. Thank you for taking my call. I'm actually originally from Dudley, and thank you very much for coming over there to explain it all to us last year.
Well, I enjoyed it. I always love going to Dudley. But you're in Newton Abbot now, Robert, and voting there, I guess.
I've moved down here to be with my kids in this place, but I still go back to Dudley, so I'm a double city person. About this second referendum, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. In negotiation, then you don't offer a way out for the opposition. You most certainly keep your cards close to your chest and walk away. Second referendum just tells them they can say what they want. They deliberately want to make sure they give you a horrible choice. So then it's a second referendum, and as he's saying, if we do and we vote to go back in, then that's fine.
Yeah,
I mean, exactly.
I suppose, Robert, I mean, I'm with that because I've been arguing tonight that if there was the prospect of a second referendum, we would get nothing from these people here at all, and they would very much hope, in the light of that, we'd reverse our decision. So I think it's completely against the national interest to offer a second referendum for those reasons, but Tim Farron clearly believes that it's in the national interest to reverse that referendum last year. So at least he's being, I mean, you know, he may be in denial, but at least he has been consistent politically over the years where he stands on the European question.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's a good man, and Corbyn's a good man. You know, we're surrounded by good people taking the wrong decision here. But I think the thing is, people don't want to have that second referendum, because otherwise it's like we give Theresa May a completely free hand in what she does. And I know she was a Remainer before, and now she's this and that. Yeah. But it means that we don't have any say in it, and I think that makes people really scared.
Well, but I repeat the point. If Theresa May was to change her mind tomorrow and say there's going to be a second referendum, we would then realistically have no chance of getting a deal here at all.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
You know, so Robert, you're not going to vote Lib Dem from the sounds of it.
No, I'll vote Conservative. But also, Nigel, I would say you seem to be filling a void of lack of information. You're providing information, and in my opinion, you're giving an even-handed look at things. But what I'm saying is a lot of people actually depend on you being even-handed and giving them true information. So. Well,
Robert, I will do my absolute best through LBC to be even-handed, to allow both, and I respect all views. If they're sincerely held and put, I respect all views. And if we can on this show give people information and knowledge, we will try every day to do that. By text I think the question should be whether every single Brexit voter read that document. Tim Farron knew what he was voting for. That's why he voted Remain. Tom, well, come on. You know, voters don't read every document. Voters don't read party manifestos. Do you know what? They never have, and they never, ever will. And by tweet I completely agree with the caller, Trevor. We should never decriminalise cannabis. I mean, there are people that feel very strongly on both sides of that. On Facebook, Steve says 52-48 is not an overwhelming result for the Brexiteers, not like Macron and Le Pen. Now, that is an overwhelming result. Yeah, it is, although interestingly, Steve, in the first round of the French president's election, 46.5% of voters voted for strong Eurosceptics. OK, now, we've had a go. We haven't really had a chance to dissect all of the Lib Dem manifesto, but we have, I think, talked a lot about the main core point. What do I think about this? Well, we had Matthew from Heathrow on, who said he was a Conservative and he will vote Liberal Democrat because he sincerely believes the referendum last year was a mistake. And I have no doubt that Tim Farron has sincerely held this view for his entire political career. But I think the problem they've got is this. Only 22% of the population in that YouGov poll the other day said they really thought the referendum was a mistake. And that means the Liberal Democrats are fishing now in a very small pond. If they were to get every one of those 22%, they would have a storming election. But I suspect that's very, very unlikely. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show on LBC.